One question that I did not know that I needed the answer to, but that I now have the answer to, is how do I submit to authority as a man who struggles with submission and struggles with authority? This is a question that has plagued me for the majority of my life, and I'm just now, like I said, coming to some type of understanding. And I think this is something that a lot of men deal with. I can see clearly in my life that there's other men around me who deal with the exact same thing. So what better topic for the Larger Than Logic podcast than how to submit, or why even to submit to authority as a man who struggles with submission and struggles with authority. My name is Avery Taylor, and you are tuned in to the Larger Than Logic podcast. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So my relationship to authority may be very, very similar to your relationship to authority. If you're like me, you found yourself in that position where there's somebody who is calling the shots, or a group of people who are making the rules, and you can clearly see that they might not necessarily be thinking about the individuals who they're making the rules for or calling the shots for. If you're like me, you've been in a situation where you've seen somebody who is put in place above all others, but they do not have character that is above all others. They may still be somebody who will lie to save face. They may be somebody who will make somebody else who is under them take less so that they can take more. They may be somebody who likes to dish out disrespect, but doesn't too much like it when they themselves are disrespected. And so finding yourself as a man in a situation with others who are put in place above you, but do not carry themselves in a way that naturally makes you want to follow or put a hand in and say, hey, let's all play on the same team. It's common, and it's very, very difficult to deal with. I mean, my relationship, or my issue in having these types of relationships, started when I was very, very young. The individuals around me, the adults that I would see, whether it be teachers, whether it be people in the church, whether it be people when I'm just out and around, my parents' friends, what have you, being around adults and seeing the decisions that they made and who they positively affected and who they negatively affected showed me at a very early age there's some individuals who will lead from a very selfish standpoint. There's some individuals who will lead and only have themselves in mind. And when I saw that, I told myself, I'm never going to be a dummy that just allows myself to be played with because somebody thinks that they're going to take me where they want to take me. I told myself, I'm never going to be that dummy or be that person who just allows themselves to be let off a bridge or allows themselves to be hurt or harmed, or their families to be hurt or harmed for the sake of not upsetting the system. I've seen so many men be so scared to be at odds with somebody, and so many men to be scared of conflict to the point where they just let anything happen and let anything pass. And that's not even what I'm encouraging today on the Larger Than Logic podcast. But what I am saying is this: throughout my journey of having issues with authority, throughout my journey of being at odds with authority and pushing back and forth, I found a few things. The first thing that I found is this, and this is something that can also be validated, or not even validated, but this is something that you find when you study 2 Peter chapter 2, specifically verses 18 through 22. One thing that I found is that whether the individual in authority did something right or did something wrong, when you as a man make a decision that you are going to challenge authority, right? And when you as a man make a decision that you are going to buck at authority and you're going to go head to head with authority, what you have just did is made a decision, of course, to take every single last thing that comes along with that, good or bad. Now, this is the crazy part about that. No matter which way you spin it, if the individuals or individual in authority has made a rule and then you do not follow that rule, whether the rule was a good rule or a bad rule, no matter which way you spin it, you did not obey the rule. And so if they decide to deal with you harshly, if they decide to punish you, if they decide to give you consequences for the action or the decision that you made, no matter which way you spin it on the technicality, they're in the right. And a lot of times, if there's an onlooker, if there's people who are watching this situation from the outside looking in, even if you have a point, even if you are justified in theory or on principle of what you're standing on, your actions were insubordinate. The things that you said were out of line because you're not the individual who's making the rules. You're the individual who's tasked with following those rules. And so the thing about it is, when you're doing these things right and when we're moving into these situations, no matter how right we may be, in essence, we are not occupying the space that we are called to occupy in that moment. Now, the question is, what does this look like in conversation of us being men of God, right? What does this look like in conversation of those of us who know that we are disciples of Christ and are trying to live lives worthy of that calling, right? What it looks like is this. When we walk into these spaces, right, and when we are interacting with authority, whether that be our bosses, whether that be law enforcement or the government, whether that be clergy, pastors in the church, however you want to spin the conversation, right? How we interact with these individuals, individuals of authority in all assets of life or in all aspects of life, it says a lot more about our relationship with God than it says about us. What do I mean by this? How I react to authority, how I react to even authority that disrespects me. Say a cop is pulling me out of my car for no reason at all. Say a boss says something slick but expects me not to say something back or is playing favorites. Say clergy is teaching something that's completely and totally outside of what I believe the Bible is saying. Of course, not something dealing with confines like salvation, things that are very, 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 very important, but something stupid like the church shouldn't have an oven in it. Okay, who cares about if the church has an oven in it or not? What I'm saying is that how you carry yourself in these situations says a lot more about your relationship with Christ than it says about you personally. Case in point, if with every little situation I get defensive and feel as though I have to retaliate and I feel as though I have to say something back and I say, and I feel as though I need to be the one to put somebody in their place or get somebody back in line, what does that say about the God I say I serve? Am I saying with my actions and with my spirit and how I'm reacting that I believe the God that I serve is all powerful and that his will be carried out regardless of what anybody says it does, as scripture lets us know? Or am I saying that if I don't get this person together, if I don't get this situation together, if I am not the one to pull this string or that string, that, oh, God's not going to get the glory at the end of the day? Am I saying that vengeance is mine, or am I saying that vengeance is God's? And I think these are very, very important questions to ask ourselves, because we haven't even gotten into the conversation of how insolence is a sin. If you read Romans chapter 1 and you go down the list of sins, insolence is in there. What is insolence? It is having a hard heart or being obstinate to the authority that has been put in place. This is completely and totally correspondent to the thought that is shared in 1 Peter chapter 2 at verse 19, I believe it is, where it lets us know that when we go and we get punished for being at odds with authority, even if they're wrong, they could be completely wrong. How crazy do we look when honestly, let's actually spin it. If you get punished for something that you did, is authority wrong? No. There's no way for authority to even look wrong when they punish you for you doing exactly what you were not supposed to do. But as we know probably will happen also, how crazy does it actually look when you are being chastised or punished for doing nothing wrong at all? Now we're starting to look like Christ, right? Being afflicted, being beaten, being bruised, being pushed to the side, being pushed down, and you're doing nothing but what you're supposed to be doing. You're doing nothing but what you're supposed to be doing, and everything in the world is still crashing down on you. What's more honorable? The word of God is letting us know that when we do everything that we're supposed to do, when we cross our I's and dot our T's, and then we still face adversity, this is the honorable position. I'm not saying this to you today to caution you or to try to charge you to be a weak man. I'm not trying to say that you should not speak up for the oppressed. We see throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament the degree to which you are supposed to advocate for those who are in need, who you're supposed to raise your voice. We even see a difference in the Old Testament context under the law, I believe it's in Exodus, between killing and murder. You know what I'm saying? If somebody comes into this apartment and is attempting to harm me, my wife, or my daughter, and honestly, I don't even know for a fact why they entered my apartment, and then I defend us accordingly, that's completely different than if they come and leave, and once I realize that, I go looking for them and take that life. These are two completely different situations, right? And a lot of times we don't talk about it, but when we make these decisions, there's a difference between having a spirit of righteousness and righteous response, and then having a spirit of defensiveness and vengeance. It's different when I'm trying to act through the power and the spirit of God, which is always of love and restoration, rather than when I'm trying to act in the spirit of defensiveness and vengeance and pride, saying, I'm not going to let this person think they have the one up on me. I'm not going to let this man or this woman think that they can push me any which way. They're two completely different spirits, and one says, I trust God, and one says, I trust myself. And I promise you, every single time you find yourself trusting yourself, you're going to find yourself in a disadvantaged position in the short, mid, and long term. But it's when we can turn ourselves and say, hey, God, I understand that nothing that's going on around me is about me. As a man, I understand that nothing that's going on around me, good and bad, has anything to do with me personally. But it's all about whether your kingdom is going to be built up or it's going to be torn down. And we all know what's going to happen at the end of the day. All this other stuff is going to waste away. All this other stuff is not going to be here no more. When we get to heaven, those of us who make it to heaven, you're not going to recognize your wife. If your kids make it, you're not going to recognize your kids. I'm saying you're not going to be able to take that bread with you, that car with you, those tattoos with you, your pleasures, your vices. You're not going to be able to take none of that with you. So my thing is, what I'm trying to say to you is that we have to be able to shift our mind as men of God to stop looking at everything around us as a test of our pride and of our manhood and of our place. And even if we are looking at it like that, we have to understand that there's a calling on us to sacrifice our pride for our discipleship to Christ. We have to lay down ourselves and what we feel and fighting for ourselves, and then keep that same energy when it comes to actually being an advocate and disciple and obedient to what Christ has called us to. I don't know if this is helping anybody. I'm pretty sure it is. And so this is what I need you to do. As you're going forward, when you're dealing with authority, and honestly, let's take it a step further. When you are in the face of disrespect, when you are being disrespected, right? Or you're in a situation where you feel as though things are not being carried the way you believe they should be carried, before you react, before you let your emotions get the best of you, because yes, as men, we do still have emotions. Before you let your emotions get the best of you, stop and ask yourself, is the thing that I'm about to do and the thing that I'm about to say furthering God's purpose on this earth, or is it solely advocating or moving within the interest that I see fit right now in this current moment? Is the thing that I'm about to say in accordance with the will and the way of God, or is it me just trying to get my rocks off? And there's an easy way to check yourself. If you're about to do something or say something and you cannot find scripture to validate the actions or the things you're about to say or do on behalf of quote unquote God, you might not be doing something that is within the will of God. And I promise you trying to take stuff out of context is not going to make this work in your favor any better than if you were just going and getting your rocks off the easy way. You know what I'm saying? And so honestly, I even take it a step further. This conversation that we're having right now, it calls a lot of attention to your heart. It calls a lot of attention to your true internal desire. Do you truly desire to be a man of God? Do you truly desire to be obedient? Do you truly desire to be a man after God's own heart? Or do you want to be a man who orders his own steps? Do you want to be a man who is his own God? Because the thing about it is, the answer to this question, how you answer that question and how you truly intention yourself in your heart, is going to determine the result that you get right now while you're here on this earth. And when you check out, it's going to determine the results that your family gets right now while you're here on this earth and when you check out. So I would encourage you, really spend time with that question. And if you do want to be a man of God, when you're dealing with authority, when you're dealing with decisions being made, when you're dealing with teams, when you're dealing with disrespect, when you're finding yourself in these situations where you have to submit yourself and it's very, very hard, remember and ask yourself, am I sitting here and trying to submit myself to the will of God better, or am I trying to vie for myself? If you allow yourself to intentionally submit for the sake of the will of God, and at all times put yourself at God's feet and say, what do you have for me to do in this scenario, in this situation, in this conversation, in this context? You would be surprised at what he will lead you to and what he will lead you through and the results that will be on the other side. But like I say, I ain't never trying to hold you all too long. My name is Avery Taylor. You are tuned into the Larger Than Logic podcast, and I'm so glad that you have allowed me to be a part of your journey.